Welcome to Untold Chronicles. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and share this deep dive if you find it fascinating. Today we're diving into something truly incredible.
Yeah.
Fibrodysplasia Ossificans Progressiva, or FOP for short.
Wow.
It's an extremely rare genetic disorder, and we're going to unpack some scientific articles and medical summaries to really understand it.
It's definitely a condition that captures the imagination.
Oh, yeah.
It's as fascinating as it is devastating.
Yeah, I was reading that it affects about 1 in every 1.5 million people
Right?
worldwide.
Yeah.
I'm trying to wrap my head around just how rare that is.
It's mind-bogglingly rare.
Yeah.
Think of it this way. If you filled a stadium with 1.5 million people,
Right.
only one person in that entire crowd would have FOP.
Wow.
That's like finding a specific grain of sand on an entire beach.
That really puts it in perspective.
Yeah.
Okay, so what exactly is FOP? We've got this term second skeleton
Right.
floating around, which
Ugh.
sounds a little sci-fi to me.
It's not science fiction, unfortunately. It's the reality for people with FOP.
Right.
Essentially, their bodies start turning soft tissues like muscles,
Okay.
tendons, and ligaments into bone.
Oh, wow.
This bone forms outside the normal skeleton, hence the term second skeleton.
So instead of healing normally from an injury, the body just starts creating bone?
It's more complex than that.
Okay.
Imagine you have a small cut.
Okay.
In most people, the body repairs that cut with new tissue,
Right.
but in someone with FOP, the body can go into overdrive
Uh-huh.
and create bone at the injury site instead.
That's wild.
Yeah.
What could trigger something like that?
Anything that causes inflammation can trigger it.
Like what?
A bump, a bruise, a fall, even a viral infection.
Really?
Yeah, and that's one of the major challenges of FOP.
Oh, wow.
Even seemingly minor things can trigger bone growth where it shouldn't be.
Okay.
This process is called heterotopic ossification, or HO.
HO. Okay.
And over time, it leads to joint stiffening up and movement becoming restricted.
I'm already feeling a little stiff just thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
So is there a reason this happens? Is it a random thing, or is there something specific going on in the body?
It all boils down to a gene called ACVR1.
Okay.
It's like the control center for bone growth in your body.
Uh-huh.
And in people with FOP, there's a mutation in this gene.
So it's genetic.
It's like a switch that's stuck in the on position,
Okay.
sending constant signals to the body to make more bone,
Wow.
even when it doesn't need to.
Oh, I get it now.
Yeah,
So this gene is constantly telling the body to make bone, even if there's no injury to heal.
exactly.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
But it also sounds incredibly difficult to manage.
you're absolutely right. It's a complex condition that requires a multifaceted approach to care.
Wow.
But let's talk about how FOP actually manifests
Okay.
before we get into the treatment side of things.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah.
I'm curious about what the early signs might be.
Right.
If this bone is forming all over the body, are there any obvious indicators early on?
Actually, there is. One of the most consistent signs of FOP is present at birth.
At birth?
It's a malformation of the big toes.
Really?
They are usually shorter and may have fewer bones than usual.
So right from the start, there's the potential clue that something's different.
Exactly.
I wonder how many parents might even notice that.
You're right. It's a subtle sign,
Yeah.
but it can be a crucial early indicator for doctors who know what to look for.
No, that makes sense.
And then usually within the first 10 years of life,
Okay.
the heterotopic ossification really starts kicking in.
Oh, wow.
Often it begins in the neck, shoulders, and back.
That must be terrifying for both the child and their parents.
It is.
Knowing that your body is slowly losing its ability to move freely.
Yeah.
Just imagine that.
It can be a very challenging time for families. As you might imagine, the progression of FOP varies from person to person, but ultimately it leads to severe disability.
It's heartbreaking, especially when you think about how young these individuals are when they start experiencing these limitations. I can only imagine the emotional toll it takes on everyone involved.
Absolutely. The impact goes far beyond just the physical symptoms, but I think it's important for us to delve a bit deeper into the science behind FOP before we get into those broader impacts. Would you agree?
Yeah, understanding the science can help us appreciate the complexity of this condition and the challenges of living with it. So we've talked about the gene mutation, but I'm curious about how doctors actually diagnose FOP.
The diagnostic process typically starts with a thorough physical exam.
Okay.
Doctors will look for those characteristic malformed big toes we mentioned earlier, and they'll also assess the patient's range of motion and any signs of existing bone growth outside the skeleton.
So it's a combination of visual cues and understanding the patient's history. I'm guessing imaging studies also play a role?
You're right. Imaging studies like X-ray, CT scans, and MRIs are essential for visualizing the heterotopic bone formation. These scans can show bone growing in places where it shouldn't be, confirming the diagnosis.
That must be pretty striking to see on an X-ray, and I'm guessing these images also help doctors monitor the progression of the condition.
Exactly. They provide valuable information about the location and extent of bone growth, which helps guide treatment decisions. And to get absolute confirmation, genetic testing is used to identify the specific mutation in the ACVR1 gene.
That makes sense. So once someone is diagnosed with FOP, what are the treatment options? Is there a way to stop or reverse the bone growth?
Unfortunately, there's no cure for FOP yet, but that doesn't mean there's nothing that can be done. The focus of treatment is on managing the symptoms, minimizing the impact of those flare-ups we talked about, and improving the quality of life for individuals living with FOP.
So it's about helping people live as comfortably as possible with this condition. What does that kind of management involve?
It's a multi-pronged approach. First and foremost, medications can help manage the inflammation and pain associated with flare-ups. Corticosteroids, for instance, are often used to reduce inflammation, and nonsteroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. NSAIDs can help with pain and swelling.
So it's about managing the acute symptoms when they occur.
Yeah.
Are there any medications that can actually slow down the bone growth itself?
There's some evidence that bisphosphonates, a class of drugs commonly used to treat osteoporosis, might help slow down the formation of heterotopic bone, but the results are still somewhat mixed and more research is needed in this area.
It sounds like there's still a lot we're learning about the best ways to manage this condition. Beyond medication, what other approaches are there?
Supportive care is absolutely crucial. This includes things like physical therapy, occupational therapy, and assistive devices. Physical therapy, for example, can help maintain range of motion and prevent joints from becoming completely locked.
Okay.
But as we discussed earlier, even minor injuries can trigger bone growth, so therapy has to be approached very carefully.
That's a tricky balance, isn't it? Encouraging movement while also avoiding any trauma that could make things worse.
Exactly. It requires a skilled physical therapist who understands the complexities of FOP. Occupational therapy, on the other hand, focuses on helping individuals adapt to their limitations and find new ways to perform daily tasks.
So it's about finding creative solutions and maximizing independence. I'm thinking about things like adaptive utensils and modified clothing.
Precisely, these simple adaptations can make a world of difference in someone's ability to live a fulfilling life. And as the condition progresses, assistive devices like wheelchairs and walkers become essential for mobility and independence.
I imagine that the right assistive devices can be truly liberating for people with FOP, giving them back some of the freedom that the condition tries to take away.
Absolutely. And let's not forget about the importance of emotional support. Living with a rare and debilitating condition like FOP can be incredibly isolating and emotionally taxing. Support groups, counseling, and a strong network of family and friends can make all the difference.
It sounds like managing FOP is truly a team effort involving medical professionals, therapists, loved ones, and most importantly, the individual living with the condition.
You've summed it up perfectly. It's a collaborative journey that requires compassion, understanding, and a commitment to finding ways to enhance quality of life, even in the face of extraordinary challenges. We haven't talked about the role of surgery yet, and I think it's an important topic to address.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm wondering if surgery could be an option for removing some of the extra bone growth.
It's a question that often comes up, but the answer is unfortunately more complicated than a simple yes or no. In most cases, surgery is avoided in FOP because any kind of surgical trauma, even something as minor as a biopsy, can trigger more bone growth at the surgical site.
Wow, so even trying to fix the problem surgically could potentially make it worse.
It's a catch-22, as they say, but there are a few very specific situations where surgery might be considered as a last resort. For instance, if bone growth is severely restricting someone's breathing or their ability to eat, surgery might be an option to remove some of that excess bone and improve their quality of life.
It sounds like a risky decision, weighing the potential benefits against the very real possibility of complications.
Exactly. It's a decision that requires careful consideration by a multidisciplinary team involving experts in FOP orthopedics and anesthesiology, among others. And it's important to remember that surgery is never a cure for FOP. It's simply a way to manage certain complications that can arise.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation. Before we wrap up, I want to touch on something you mentioned earlier, the emotional and social aspects of living with FOP. Can you talk a bit more about the challenges that individuals and families face beyond the physical limitations?
It's a crucial aspect of this condition that often gets overlooked. Imagine living with the constant fear of a new flare-up, knowing that even a minor bump or fall could lead to more bone growth and further restrict your movement. It creates a sense of anxiety and hypervigilance that can be incredibly exhausting.
I can see how that would take a toll on someone's mental and emotional well-being. And I imagine it impacts social interactions as well.
Absolutely. As the condition progresses and mobility becomes increasingly limited, it can be challenging to participate in activities that others take for granted. Going out with friends, playing sports, even simple things like walking down the street can become difficult or impossible.
So it's not just the physical limitations, it's the ripple effect those limitations have on every aspect of someone's life.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to have a strong support system in place. Family, friends, support groups, therapists, these individuals can provide a lifeline of emotional support, practical assistance, and a sense of community that can make all the difference in helping someone navigate the challenges of FOP.
It sounds like, in many ways, the social and emotional support is just as important as the medical management.
I couldn't agree more. It's about addressing the whole person, not just the physical symptoms. And that's where organizations like the International FOP Association, IFOPA, play a vital role. Have you heard of them?
I have, but I don't know much about them. What kind of work do they do?
They're an incredible resource for individuals and families affected by FOP. They provide information, connect people with others who understand what they're going through, advocate for research funding, and raise awareness about this often overlooked condition.
It's amazing that even though FOP is so rare, there's a whole community out there dedicated to supporting those affected by it.
It's a testament to the power of human connection and the unwavering dedication of those who are determined to find a cure for this debilitating disease.
It's been such an insightful conversation. I'm learning so much about FOP, and I'm sure our listeners are too. But we're just about out of time for this part of the deep dive. Welcome back to Untold Chronicles. We're wrapping up our deep dive into FOP, and I have to say it's been a roller coaster of emotions. The challenges that individuals with FOP face are truly remarkable, but so is their strength and resilience.
I couldn't agree more. What stuck with me throughout our conversation is the sheer determination within the FOP community. They're not just passively accepting their limitations, they're actively fighting for a better future. And that spirit is contagious even for those of us who aren't directly affected by FOP.
You're right. There's a powerful lesson there for all of us about finding ways to adapt and thrive, even when life throws us a curveball.
Absolutely. And it highlights the importance of focusing on what we can control, even when things feel out of our hands.
Speaking of control, one thing we haven't talked much about is research. Where do things stand right now in terms of finding a cure or effective treatments for FOP? Is there hope on the horizon?
There is definitely hope, and that hope is fueled by some incredible research being done around the world. Scientists are making significant strides in understanding the complex mechanisms of FOP, and they're exploring a range of promising treatment approaches.
What are some of the most exciting areas of research that you're seeing?
One area that's generating a lot of buzz is the development of small molecule inhibitors.
Okay.
These are drugs that are designed to target very specific molecules involved in the bone formation process. Think of it like creating a custom-designed key that fits perfectly into a lock and prevents it from turning.
Okay.
In this case, the lock is the faulty signal that tells the body to keep making bone, and the key is the small molecule inhibitor that blocks that signal.
That's a great analogy. So
Yeah.
it's about getting super precise with how we target the problem.
Exactly. Another area that holds immense promise is gene therapy. Researchers are investigating ways to deliver healthy copies of the ACVR1 gene into the body's cells. If this approach proves successful, it could potentially correct the underlying genetic defect that causes FOP.
Wow, that would be a game changer. Imagine actually fixing the problem at its root.
It's an ambitious goal, but the progress being made in gene therapy is incredibly exciting. And then there's research focused on anti-inflammatory agents. As we discussed earlier, those inflammatory flare-ups are a major driver of the bone formation process. So if we can find ways to effectively control those flare-ups, we might be able to slow down or even prevent the progression of FOP.
It's almost like trying to extinguish the fire before it has a chance to spread.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that research takes time. These breakthroughs don't happen overnight, but the progress being made is encouraging. And for individuals living with FOP, every step forward offers a glimmer of hope for a future with greater freedom and fewer limitations.
I can only imagine how much that hope means to them. It's a reminder that even in the face of seemingly insurmountable challenges, there's always reason to keep fighting.
That's the beauty of the human spirit. We're wired to keep pushing forward to find solutions and to create a better future for ourselves and for generations to come. And that's what fuels the passion and dedication of the researchers, clinicians, and advocates who are working tirelessly to find a cure for FOP.
It's a powerful reminder that even though FOP is a rare condition, it has the potential to teach us so much about resilience, the importance of community, and the power of scientific discovery.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, this has been a truly remarkable deep dive. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise and insights with us. I feel like I've learned so much, and I'm sure our viewers have too.
It's been my pleasure, and I encourage everyone listening to share this information with others. The more people who know about FOP, the more support we can build for research and for the individuals and families who are living with this condition every day.
That's a great point. Awareness is key. And on that note, we want to remind everyone to subscribe to Untold Chronicles for more fascinating deep dives into the world around us. We'll be exploring all sorts of topics from the scientific to the historical to the just plain weird.
And we always encourage you to share your thoughts and comments below. We love hearing from you and learning from your perspectives.
So hit that subscribe button, tell your friends, and keep those curious minds engaged. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring.